Howdy. Well, I want to tell you a little tale. Come on now. This is a long rifle. Let me get a chair over here so I can chat. Oh, come on, you. Be nice. Oh. There. Between 1861, April of 1861, and April of 1865, the United States of America was rent asunder. We call it the Civil War, the war between the states. Some call it the War of Northern Aggression. Some call it the Second American Revolution. But however you call it, the war required weapons. And one of those weapons, one of the major weapons of that war, was the 1861 Springfield rifled musket. And it was a mainstay of that period. Now, this was, of course, made in Springfield for the Union Army, but they weren't all used by the Union Army. This one was made in 1862. And there's one distinct factor that I just discovered a while back that tells me that this is not what it appears to be at first, which is a Union Springfield rifle. You see, at the beginning of the war, the southern states were using mainly the revolvers, the muskets, whatever, that they had on hand, which were both American ones that the Army had left behind when the Union moved north and abandoned the South. Now, remember something, back, in the 1850s, I think it was under Buchanan, Jefferson Davis was the Secretary of War. And what Davis had done was fortify all of the southern forts. He shipped ordnance, he shipped cannons, some munitions, some powder, things like that, into those forts. The reason was he was expecting a war very soon between the North and the South, and he wanted to make sure that the South was well fortified, well provisioned, shall we say. Well, one thing that he did was before 1861, of course, 1860, of course, he shipped muskets to the South. These were the earlier patterns, some of the early Maynard primered muskets, and others similar. Plus, all the boys, the good old boys in the South, had their own flintlocks and some cap locks. You would use a primer like this. This is called a top hat primer, and that was what this kind of rifle and most cap and ball systems at the time used. These kind here, this is a Civil War Lamont, uses a much smaller type of primer, but that was what was used predominantly in the muskets. Anyway, a lot of these were used by the South. After the war commenced with the first battles, one thing that happened was a lot of guys got killed, and a lot of them dropped their rifles. And Southern boys, because remember at the beginning the South was winning most of those battles, the Southern boys would go and pick up those rifles that just got dropped. And I think this is a Confederate rifle. And the reason I think that is there's one distinct thing that the Confederates did. They didn't like the rear sight on the Union rifles. They would always file off, drift out, or unscrew the rear sight and just use it with the front post and just look down the barrel. And that was their way of doing things. Well, this one is missing the rear sight. I can't tell if it was done later, but it looks like a typical Springfield rifled musket as adapted by a Southern regiment. So I'm going to say this is a Southern Springfield. It was made in 1862, according to this marking on the lock plate, and it's a typical 1861 pattern of that period. Picked this up at an estate sale. Killer deal, by the way. I missed out on two others I really wanted, but and the guy who bought them was a total idiot. But I did get this one. Cost me $500, which for this kind of thing, that's a great deal. Anyway, I just thought I'd mention that I discovered that denotes this as a Confederate Springfield. Probably a battlefield pickup. Probably, I don't know, used in, I don't know about Antietam, but it was definitely used in probably Manassas or, any of the other major or minor battles and skirmishes of the period 1861 to 1865, because Appomattox was not until April of 1865. And in between, those Confederate boys, they made a great accounting of themselves. There's a great song Hoyt Axton does called "I'm a Good Old Rebel," and it's if you ever find a copy, it's on YouTube. Listen to it. It's something I like to sit down with an adult beverage and a stogie in the evening and listen to and think of things like that, and Shiloh Hill and other similar songs. It's good. Anyway, that's my 2 bits for today. Happy trails.